Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Disruption Talks by Netguru, where we invite top industry experts to discuss digital acceleration, winning strategies, and innovation. My name is Güelfo. I'm a consultant director at Netguru and will be your host for this episode. Today, we have the privilege to speak with a very special guest, Michael Ewert, Global Head of Technology Advisory at JLL Technologies. Michael, we are thrilled to have you. Welcome to Disruption Talks.
Thanks, Danny. Welcome, everyone.
I'm very happy to have you here. So let me start with a little bit of a personal touch point. I'm very curious. Michael, what does a day in the life of JLL's Global Head of Technology Advisory looks like?
Well, I guess there's a difference between how I want it to look like and then what it ends up looking like every day. So I'll start with the latter. I think for our people, my team, my approach is to make myself redundant as fast as possible. And that can be on a daily basis, it can be on a longer cycle, but normally I kind of try to be there, lead, but then try to get out of the way as fast as I can. And I think that's an essential principle of how I see my job. And then I think my inner self wakes up every day and wants to make sure I was useful or even inspiring. And I think the latter recently is pretty difficult with my team, which actually makes the job exciting. And then for our customers, it's a little bit different. I want to make sure that they get the most valuable perspectives and they have a team on their side that pushes them to the next level. So that's kind of how I'd like to see my day. And then in reality, I'm tracking my time in 15-minute increments. So 40% is about leading, keeping the train on the rails and delivered results. 20% of my time is really making sure we grow in the right speed and in the right fashion and make a dent in the market. 5 to 10% is performance management, metrics, finance, and 15% is really to compensate for the other 15%. And one is have the ability to think, and the other one is just to deal with the friction and meeting waste we encounter every day. So that's kind of how my average day looks like.
I mean, it looks like intense, even if the percentages change actually a little bit from day to day. But very specifically, who or what is it that inspired you to actually take this particular path?
That's a good question. I mean, for me to happen organically, early in my career, I was always chasing the most exciting niche. Actually, I read a book and I talked to a coach that I had, a mentor that I had, and he said, for you to kind of be successful in whatever you do, you always have to find a niche. And I always was looking for that and felt, whatever I'm doing should benefit the business and ultimately the people I'm in this together. So really it's an, amalgamation of decisions and chasing that niche over the years that kind of led me to where I am today.
And where you're at today is actually a very, very interesting place to be at, right? But if I ask you to look a tiny bit back and, for example, focus on the last couple of days, we have all gone through a little bit of a tough patch. If you think of 2022, 2021, what are the things that you are most proud of?
It's interesting. I mean, for me, 2020 was a significant moment. It felt like an emergency break. I was 80 to 90% traveling of my time and working, and I was expecting a kid. And, my daughter was born in the middle of the lockdown. So when it started, basically, and everything stopped. And for me, I couldn't understand what's happening and it was too much. So actually it took me probably 2 months to turn like something that felt very onerous and emotional, I think, to take that into an opportunity. And actually, you might not remember me that well from the time we worked together, but my health and fitness wasn't really good. So I think my opportunity to fix that was the most pivotal experience for me. And having now a routine that I've sustained over the last 2 years, 3 years now, is something I'm super proud of. My whole life, I always prioritize something else over that. And COVID just made me realize that, this is the first priority now. So change my lifestyle, change everything around it. And I'm more than happy that I made that choice, actually.
It's an incredible experience to realize how is it that such a meaningful event at a global level has actually had this translation at the individual impact, right? And the individual space. So thank you for sharing that, Michael. But if I ask you to look a tiny bit ahead, for instance, this year and 2024 and beyond, what is it that are you most excited about? What are the most exciting projects, professional or personal, in your life?
Yeah, I mean, in about a month, my second child is getting born, so I guess that's going to be an interesting one.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I start to feel like I need education. Like I have those waves of like up and downs. Actually, last 2 weeks I was in a training course with the team. That was super inspiring for me, at least. So I feel like I have that need. So I'm looking forward to more learning this year and next year. But when I look at our business specifically, I think the character of our work becomes much more in lockstep with the business of our customers, which I find super exciting. I think more and more of our customers lean on us to build their technology office when it comes to real estate. And since people in workplace became one of the major conundrums for senior business leaders, those perspectives are really in demand. And the velocity of that demand is really incredible. So I'm really privileged and humbled to actually be in that position. I feel like I'm in a little myopic gravity point in the world that I'm very excited about. And I think the other area that I'm really excited about is our support that we give to our customers in Asia Pacific and the Middle East. There's so much innovation and construction going on around smart city grids and really new ways of shaping up cities even. And when we think about NEOM, for instance, the line and other things, it's just very, very humbling and to be part of, shaping and helping some of those strategies from a technology standpoint. And I'm really excited that our team is part of that.
Well, absolutely. So let me actually take a step back for both our viewers and our listeners. Can you tell us a little bit more specifically about JLL Technologies? What is it that the organization focuses on?
Absolutely. I mean, for those who don't know, JLL maybe even, JLL is a real estate services business, active in 73 countries, around 100,000 employees. Probably I don't know the exact statistics, but billions of square foot under management from a facility and property management standpoint, and probably 20 to 25% of the capital that flows into real estate in some way, shape, or form goes through our business. And most of the leasing transactions that are happening on the back of that, as well, most of the consulting in how we evaluate businesses or companies that hold assets like real estate, or real estate itself, the corporate finance side of the house, the way you construct, design a building, the way you fit out a building in a workplace, the way you buy land and whatnot, all of that is kind of JLL. And 5 or 6 years ago, we started to acquire technology companies, and we realized that we have to transform. And we incrementally did so until 2019, when we founded JLL Technologies, who has 2 strategic missions. It's to tech enable all of JLL, which really means to create digital approaches and transformative solutions to help grow our market share and increase our business margins. And the other side, which kind of I'm more part of, is to deliver the best technology to our customers. And by doing so, actually grow a technology revenue business that's reported out to the market. And increase the investment value of our venture capital arm, which is called Spark. So if you look at how we approach this, we really think about problems holistically, and it's very difficult to do that in a very multi-dimensional, complex industry like real estate. That is, from an innovation standpoint and from a transformation standpoint, a little bit behind, I would say. But our focus is really on making sure that we buy, build, a partner, invest in the right technologies that are in service of our customer needs. And by doing so, we kind of try to change the industry and ourselves.
I want to focus a little bit on the people's end, actually. And speaking about changing ourselves, as you were talking about, in a post-pandemic world, workplace experience, so that area of dialogue between people technology, and the spaces we inhabit has become a priority for many organizations. How is JLL using technology to better understand and serve these changing needs of the workforce?
I think you're bringing up a highly complex and highly relevant need. And let me maybe start with, firstly, we need to appreciate that we deal with a multi-generational environment. So buildings, technology environments, and the workforce are highly diverse, highly localized, even within one company. So, to simplify it, you have old and new buildings. You have technologies that have been around for 30 years. You have very new cloud technologies that are kind of independent of any asset. And you have a workforce that just comes out of the university, and a workforce that potentially retires very soon. So, even with one company that's complex, and thinking about the industry, I think it's extrapolating that. So, secondly, I believe the way the industry designs and operates workplaces hasn't really enabled so far direct and continuous communication with the end user. So the experience that end users have when they interact with any application today through any device is that whatever features are needed are actually delivered in almost a seamless way. And when you think about the way we use technology on behalf of our customers, or shape that technology for our customers, is really to establish that optimal infrastructure, applications, business processes to at least harmonize the fundamental pieces. So, for instance, which workstations are in use, how have people use different types of work points, what are the areas that are underused, overused, how distributed or condensed is the use of the space. And this is often augmented with research and people surveys to actually come to conclusions on how we can optimize that people experience. But again, compared to the normal experience people have with technology, you don't have that velocity in communication. So we can really see that the physicality and the life cycle of the workplaces, and therefore the fluidity of people needs, are really colliding in so many areas. And I think that's an opportunity for anyone that wants to rethink work and collaboration overall, and the intended role of the built environment. And I think that's a very exciting path to be on. And I think the next decade is going to be transformative in its nature in that space.
I'm absolutely with you. Let me link this to the concept of future of work, right? So this idea of future of work has been around for a while, but with the arrival of the pandemic, the arrival as well of remote work as the new normal brought the concept to a broader audience. So somehow connected to your previous answer, but how does JLL envision the future of work?
Very simple answer. Seamless, augmented, and equitable collaboration, where places are conduit to amplify that experience. Well, I think that's a sentence that's probably going to resonate. But with seamless, I mean that individuals don't have to think about, are they ready to go into an office or into a space? Are they ready to collaborate with others? Augmented means that actually a lot of the onerous tasks that we have to encounter have to deal with the lack of automation in the background. And I believe, the strides we make specifically around AI recently are an indicator that I believe we'll see a much better augmentation to take the best out of us into the productive world. And equitable means really at times where people work asynchronously and are not necessarily thinking how to harmonize all activities across their teams, where to be present, where not to be present, making sure that wherever they are present represents an equitable experience and how they collaborate, I believe is kind of the pinnacle expectation. And how we architect, design, and operate places needs to be in service of that. And I think that's how I see the future of work. And work is so different for everyone. We talked about the generational aspect, but I truly see technology having an impact to enable that. The other part is much more societal in my mind, and this is probably a more personal thought. I always loved history at school. And when I look back to the 20th century and 19th century, when we had the Industrial Revolution, we had the formation of unions to actually improve the work conditions. So if we think about the past of the work, the history of work, that's been evolving. And the concepts of, 4-day week or less hours, more productivity, I think are just a natural evolution of that. But what I find fascinating, I mentioned this on another podcast recently, is that the social contract, and there's a question on that social contract I'm seeing, of employees to be expected to be at the place of work by employers, has been basically voided during COVID. And with the voiding of that social contract, the expectations and the laws, if you will, the dynamics of those expectations have changed. Also, the economics of those expectations have changed. And what we're seeing now is a evolved understanding of how to lean into that expectation. And we see companies asking for people to come back. And that has many reasons. And some companies are really impactful economically for a local city. So take Seattle, for instance, or take New York. A lot of businesses thrive because employees commute or have commuted in the past to those locations. So there's a societal impact that those corporations have on how they architect work. But then there's the individual component where I want my lifestyle to harmonize with my work style. And we had the privilege and the need to change that dramatically overnight. And it's very difficult for employees now to kind of understand why something that they have now had the freedom to choose when they come in and go out is changing again. And I feel like that's a very interesting conundrum. And I think I would say all enterprises that I'm working with, their ability to articulate a much more, again, seamless, augmented, and equitable collaboration that is not rule-based, based on social contracts from the past century, is an important step to evolve into a better future of work.
Thank you very much for this answer. Let me actually keep talking about the future for a tiny bit, okay? Let's look at the clients end. If you think about your most future-driven clients, what are they asking for?
That's the flip side. The expectation of future of work and the reality to enable is, I would say, a anagram. So a lot of our customers that are future-driven realize that technology debt that I actually mentioned, the multi-generation technologies, and they accept that debt and want to digitally transform their real estate, so their assets, as well as their business capabilities that are orchestrating those assets and the experiences to react better to those needs, which builds the point back to how do you increase communication with your end user. They also know that only highly adaptable organizations can achieve that. So they zoom a lot on what's the optimal people and communication systems to deliver transparency and value back to their business. And this, by the way, includes better partnering just simply with their peers across corporate functions. And lastly, and I think it's often understated, is they understand their mission for a net zero carbon portfolio, and they take it very seriously.
So I wanted to actually grab the chance to ask already a question from the audience. I want to start from a question from Philip. Michael, a lot of real estate is being abandoned, quote unquote, due to companies reducing their expenses and or increasing their reliance on the wave of remote work. Is there a reality in which no technology will convince neither the employer nor the employee to care about the office space over the employer's cost structure and employee's comfort?
Wow, that's a very complex question in itself. And I think it's reflective of the challenge. So I do believe that there is a reality that, Philip, you're designing here. I'm just not sure what the preference of the community is to live in that reality. And I do believe that a lot of the reasons why we have clashes in expectations across generations is because there's conviction that things have to be this way or that way. And there's no substantiation through data that suggests, 80% of your employees want to work in that style, 20% want to work in that style. Now, how do you adapt to that? And what are your lagging or leading indicators that that composition is changing, and how are you reacting to it? And the biggest challenge that I think customers have is the life cycle of assets or buildings. They're not just replaced easily. They're not built easily, refitted easily. It all takes time. So I think the anti-dynamics that I described between, a feature released in an app and a feature released in the built environment across a portfolio, across communities, and enabled, it's just a different experience. And I do believe it's a big challenge for us to understand how we can harmonize that fluidity with the physicality of the assets that companies have and run today. And a lot of people want to go to the office. I know a lot of people that love to go to their location of work, and some people have to. If you think production facilities or logistics facilities, manual labor is required in some of those assets. And we shall not forget that it's only about office. I think it's about a broader set of employees that we're talking about here.
Thank you, Michael. I asked you a while ago about the most future-driven clients. What are they asking for? But I'm curious about what are those clients that want to be at the avant-garde, that want to be at the forefront of innovation.
Yeah.
But that innovation is still not there. What is it that they're curious about? What is it that you're talking about that hasn't arrived but is about to come?
That's very interesting. I mean, people talk about the metaverse, or have talked. Maybe I think maybe it was just a fling. I don't know. I would say the definition of the future of work that I gave, I think, is what I stand behind, is the objective target for the next decade to be achieved. But to achieve that, I guess, a lot of customers need a seat to shape and impact the future of work. So when we think about corporate real estate, that specifically is shared across multiple functions with different objectives. And a lot of time, those objectives are at odds to each other. So I believe that corporate real estate specifically, is at least leaning towards being a strategic enabler, if not an influential paradigm shifter. And I think customers are asking more how they can become that. And it's not easy because, as you know, businesses work in different ways. And to really become impactful and to actually shape some of those decisions that you see today in the press, or these days in the press, that you feel like, hey, how's that happening? Is because someone doesn't have a seat at the table to actually shape that future of work in the right way.
Thank you, Michael, for this one. Let me switch a little bit the angle, okay? So let's look at the challenges that some of the early adopter or the biggest companies pushing for innovation are facing right now. Within the space of real estate, what are some of the biggest challenges that these technology-driven companies are encountering nowadays?
Yeah. Some of what I will say had a context in the last years. And I'll make note of that. So I'll skip the obvious macroeconomic geopolitical challenge. I think it's ubiquitous and everyone kind of can make their own mind about it. Specifically, when we think about corporate real estate and companies that are technology driven to drive a better future of work through real estate and technology, it's the floods of, there's floods of choice. There's 12,000 prop tech companies today. We track 1,400 or have reviewed, analyzed their capabilities. And what you can say is it's very difficult for us even to select the best out of that. So how easy can it be for someone that looks at it the first time, but is pushed content and is pushed opportunity through different channels to buy a solution? And the capacity and capability to actually inform decisions is constrained. because funding and resources to really drive some of those strategic initiatives in every firm are scarce, right? So I think that's a big challenge, how to avoid making a bad decision. The other part is, then how to make a good decision, which is, how do you deliver on the expectation of a clear ROI, and how do you also deliver on the expectation of high velocity? And with high velocity comes often highly scalable technology. And in our space, we see that there's a lot of innovation that's groundbreaking, but not always is ready to scale. So you need to have a way to innovate and adopt technology and stay curious, but also flexible about your expectations. And that's sometimes at odds with each other to show a clear ROI. And that makes it so difficult to set the right priorities and make the optimal long-term decisions, specifically in this space. And I think that's the challenge that most of our customers have. And I don't want to make any advertisements here, but that's why they lean on people like us to help out.
Absolutely. And this puts me into a space of thought about resilience and resilience of your clients. And right. So how are companies ensuring that their real estate portfolios are resilient to the impact of macro events or trends? I'm thinking of the cases of climate change or even yet another global pandemic.
Yeah. So this is a good one because it's much more than just the assets. I think we've seen an increasing amount of catastrophic events. I guess a lot of people relate them back to changing climate or change in atmosphere or whatever the reasons are. But more and more customers actually have disaster prevention, recovery policies. They have monitoring in place, specifically critical environments like data centers, labs, plants. They know that are kind of in a known area of risk. And actually, a lot of locations where you have flat surfaces that are perfect to set something up like that are actually locations that are at risk when there's an earthquake or others. And structurally, they prepare for that so that the asset is ready. But then, of course, they don't want to disrupt the operation. I think that's where they keep the monitoring on, so they understand kind of how do we train our staff, how do we make sure that whatever happens, we are ready to kind of operate, and at the same time keep everyone safe. And I think we help customers across the globe to actually achieve that. And a lot of those policies already help to react to unforeseen events. Once you have those policies, once you have some procedures, you actually know how to react. And so I feel from that standpoint, a lot of our customers are really resilient. And I think the assets that need to be are as well. And I think a very unfortunate and catastrophic example is what we've seen in Turkey, where I still get goosebumps when I see that the building that was built in line with the rules and the policies of and the guidelines of the architectural chamber. I don't know the specific name of the institution, was standing, and everything else was destroyed. And I felt like, yeah, that's the reason why you have those policies, because you never know when these things happen. But when they happen, you better are prepared. So I think there's a learning curve for everyone, and thinking about that. And then personally, I hope we don't have to face another pandemic, but I'd say if it happened again, we know much better how to react. I feel like society has built a muscle that wasn't there. And in my opinion, that should help us to navigate anything that's coming. If it's worse or less worse, I feel like we already have gone through a lot. So while I don't hope it's happening, if it happens, I feel like we will know much better what to do as a society. And then maybe as the last one, in terms of client change, I think a lot of our customers are taking very intentional steps to plan their decisions, investments, policies, to at least get to net zero, or some of them are actually striving for net zero embodied goals, which means that any emissions throughout the life cycle of that building are actually neutralized. And that's actually pretty exciting to see that there's so much seriousness about how people go about it.
Thank you, Michael. Actually, I want to grab the chance that we have a question from the audience specifically about this topic to go a tiny bit deeper on that, okay? So Mateusz asks, question, how do you think digital technologies can help the real estate industry reduce the environmental impact? And what are the most exciting trends and opportunities you see at the moment? Maybe your favorite ones as well.
Oh, wow. There's so many ways, and I think that's where the complexity starts. I think to simplify it, maybe, I think a pretty good way to start is to manage your energy. And one, be more efficient and in the assets and how you design them, how you operate them, and making sure that you reduce your energy footprint. But to do that in a most neutral way, the energy that you're consuming needs to be ideally renewable. So I think our biggest problem in our industry across the globe is access to renewable energy. I think that's a starting point, and I think technology actually enables it. And we see a ton of IoT that almost becomes OT, right? So sensors now start to optimize assets in the built environment. There's a ton of analytics that are happening that help you prevent unnecessary use. So there's even AI aspects of it where you see a building, it has lights on, and there's no one in the building. Lights are switched off, and you kind of save energy. So those kind of things almost become like table stakes right now. And then much more interesting in my mind is the circular idea, which is how do you use materials in the built environment that are ideally neutral when they are built, or how do you innovate around some key emitters like cement to actually create parts or materials that help you create and construct a building. So that's from a technology side, and that's not only software but actually material technology and others. I do believe though that from an industry standpoint, we have an opportunity to rethink and retrofit our assets that we already have. With a flattening population growth globally, we might assume that we might not need more to be built. And I know I've probably have a lot of pros and cons, and this is probably a very binary comment, but I truly believe we can do a better job as society to reuse what we already have. And I also believe we can do a better job as society to rethink how much we actually need. When I compare the flat of my grandparents, which was 35 square meters and 6 people lived in there, and then when I compare my flat, and I'm guilty as charged, it's diametrically bigger and less people live in it. And it's probably food for thought for everyone in us that has a nice place and indulges in being in nice places. They all emit or have emitted carbon when they were created. So I think it's on us to actually change the paradigm here, more than on technology.
Thank you, Michael. That was a very good answer as well. I want to keep going with questions from the audience. We have a question from Philip, and the question reads, and on a lighter note, what is your dream workplace? Go absolutely wild with your imagination. The way I read it is, how does your dream workplace look like?
Yeah, it's funny. I worked on a innovation project 5 years ago where we actually thought through a place to work, and I had some influence in how that was shaping up. And actually, today I see innovations coming to market that had some of those ideas. So what I thought at that time was the biggest challenge we had was that we have to travel a lot, and we don't have random experiences in the workplace. So the idea, or at that time, the idea, and also still my wildest imagination is that imagine you're in a meeting room, and the other side of that meeting room is like a mirror, but that mirror is potentially in a totally different city, in a different continent, and you sit at a table and you have technology enabling you almost a physical experience with a group, and the room looks the same, and the table just extends into a wall that is digital. That was one. And then the other one was walking through a corridor, and just by chance, someone else walks on the corridor somewhere else in the world, and you're just invited to have a conversation. And a screen pops up that shows me in my full body and that other person, and we just have a chat on the corridor and can do that as if we were meeting. So I think we preempted maybe a meta experience, but not with having to go out of your natural flow, right? You don't have to have lenses on and stuff on. You just have that experience in the built environment. And therefore, I think my ideal place of work is where it can have the maximum physical-esque experience without having to ship people around the globe, and can collaborate it creatively and efficiently. And I think spaces that will enable that will be the spaces that people will want to be in.
Thank you, Michael. So this actually brings me to a question that we have from the audience, in this case from Sofia, precisely about how is it that we collaborate, right? So the question, JP Morgan just asked its MD, managing director level employees to be in the office for 5 days a week. Mm-hmm. Surely the logic behind such an executive order is your physical presence will protect the downside and or develop the upside for our business. So Michael, in your knowledge, is that trend of X days in the office truly something that brings tangible benefits, or is it closer to a qualitative, we collaborate better in person type of thing?
I think I have a personal view. I'll share my personal view. I've talked to a lot of analysts from the biggest research institutes, and most of them say that 75% of executives are debating if it's a 3, 4, 5 day return to office. And that just shows me that they're not enabled or supported in actually making decisions that are groundbreaking or breakthrough in how people could collaborate. And I believe there's 2 or 3 reasons to that. I think the first reason is they might not know a better way to help people get together again. And there's a lot of research around the social impact on people working from home or not being in the office. And I'm today in Munich and in Germany, and the office is full. It's like basically like it was before, and you see laughing people. They go out for drinks. They have almost like a normal office life like it was before. So I do believe that a lot of individuals and societies want that, and communities want that. But corporations don't know how to orchestrate it because there's not the technology to actually allow that seamless and equitable collaboration, right? A lot of our teams that are global, specifically, that are not local, work asynchronously. And coming to the office sometimes feels like you're on an island because everyone else you're working with is not in the office. So how do you change that is a difficult question. I don't think we have all the answers today. And I guess lastly, even when you have a team and when you want to meet with that team and collaborate, you have to put a lot of effort in to harmonize everyone's schedules because everyone is kind of now in their private schedule, if you know what I mean. So how do you harmonize a community to be at the best time in the office? Technology can help with that, but most of that is not yet there or not implemented holistically. So ergo, the best way to reduce all those risks is to basically ask everyone back to the office. I think that's the rationale that I'm seeing is that the infrastructure, the technology, and also the built environment are not yet enabled to a level where you can trust that every team will organize themselves and be enabled to take their best selves to any place and add the most productivity back to the shareholder. And I think that's where most companies struggle today.
Thank you, Michael. So let me actually look a little bit to the future again, all right? If you could give us one bet, what's one future-proof opportunity for those companies wanted to be leaders in technology adoption within the corporate real estate industry that might not still be there, but they're really pushing for?
Yeah. What I will say will sound super cheesy, I think. Maybe not. I think listening is the biggest opportunity, and finding a way to establish a two-way communication with your employees comes on the back of that. And it's not easy. Once you achieve that, I believe you have future-proven your business. And any technology that enables that, I would argue, is one of the most valuable technologies out there.
Thank you, Michael. So we are approaching the end of our show today, and I wanted to ask you a question that we in general ask every single guest that we have in the show, or we do our best to ask every guest that we have. It's what we call the magic wand question.
Yeah.
If you could cast a spell that allowed you to provide education on a very specific topic to all 12 years old in the world,
Yeah.
what would that topic be? What would you want them to learn?
That's an interesting one, and I think I have an answer. I'll just preface it that although it might sound old-fashioned, I think there's some wisdom in it. Because when I was 12 years old, someone pretty wise told me to do exactly that. And with a very grumpy face, I did. And it's my biggest asset, I'd say. So critical and independent thinking. And the only way I believe a 12-year-old can achieve that is by reading books and be a pro in mathematics.
That was a very good answer. And I happen to agree 120%.
Thank you.
So, Michael, this was a very insightful conversation. We're going to be wrapping up the talk for today.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
I want to really thank you for the time that you have dedicated to us. I want to thank our audience, both listeners and viewers. Thank you very much for today, and welcome to our next episode happening soon. Goodbye.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone, for joining us.